Radical means to get down to the roots. This is Rootwork, and I'm Thandisizwe Chimurenga. Here with me now to discuss this is Dylan Rodríguez, a professor at the University of California, Riverside. Dylan, thank you so much for being on Rootwork today, but I'm not, your titles change. You've been in different departments. You've been the chair of so many different organizations. Tell us who you are now.
Most importantly, I'm Thandisizwe Chimurenga's longtime collaborator and friend and co-conspirator and all that kind of stuff. That's most important for today. And I've worked at UC Riverside for going on 23 years. I'm a proud founding faculty member of the new Department of Black Study, which was created a couple of years ago, 2022. And I'm in the Department of Media and Cultural Studies as well. And before that, for the first 16 years I was at Riverside, I was in the Department of Ethnic Studies. So, that's my day job. But more importantly is I do work with people like Thandi.
And you're a husband and father as well.
Something like that. You'd have to ask them. Yes, today I am. I think today I am.
Stop making me laugh, man. I'm tired. Okay, so look, I want to ask you about Riverside more later. But right now, the reason I wanted to talk to you is because you are the author of an article entitled How the Stop Asian Hate Movement Became Entwined with Zionism, Policing, and Counterinsurgency. Now, that's a pretty heavy title. And it comes out now as we are witnessing, where are we now? 200 days into this war that Israel has declared against the people of Palestine, specifically Gaza.
Yeah.
And then I turned around, I was getting ready to click on the article, and then as soon as I saw it, I turned around and it was gone.
That's right.
It was initially on TruthOut, and then it disappeared. Tell our audience about, well, first of all, tell our audience, what is this article about? And then tell us what's going on with TruthOut.
So, okay, regarding TruthOut, I will just quote my longtime elocution guide, Rasheed Wallace, by just saying that two things: ball don't lie, and regarding the T, as they say, I'll just say both teams played hard.
Dylan, that's not working for me, Dylan. Can you tell our audience without using cuss words what's going on with Truth?
All right. So let me just tell you what the article is about, and that would probably lead to some discussion. And a close listener will probably be able to deduce why it might be a tricky thing to publish for certain outlets. All right. So the point of the article is this. Ever since the emergence of the Stop Asian Hate movement, mostly through hashtags, this thing pops up around 2021, and it immediately provokes my suspicion and gets my close attention for a couple different reasons. One is that I'm suspicious of any movement, any response, any hashtag that premises some version of social justice response around the terms of hate. Okay. And the reason for that is at least twofold. One is that this liberal dependence on the concept of hate, not to mention the criminal justice regime of hate crime laws and hate crime policing, is inherently structured to reproduce the policing of the very communities, the very people whom hate crime statutes, we presume, have been created to protect, right? So it is no coincidence that when one looks closely at how hate crime statutes and how hate crime laws are actively policed and enforced, they are disproportionately used to protect hetero white people, white men in particular. Right? In other words, they are not. Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Now, just my little cursory view, I'm no scientist, certainly not a data scientist. I haven't looked hard. I haven't looked long, but just my little cursory review. Isn't it mostly the heterosexual white men doing all the hating?
Well, this is the problem, is that if we rely on the terms of hate, we're not going to get anywhere, right? We're not going to get anywhere because for a couple of reasons. One thing is that the discourse of hate, the criminalization and policing of hate, it relies on individual activities and it relies on individual notions of bad feeling. So right off the bat, when you premise an ostensible anti-racist or social justice movement around the terms of hate, like Stop Asian Hate has done, you've already limited the scope of your analysis and the scope of your diagnosis of what is kind of catalyzing and structuring what you might name as anti-Asian violence, anti-Asian racial and gendered racist violence. So that's one piece of this. The second piece of this that started coming out when I did the research for this article is that the Anti-Defamation League, which is the kind of domestic U.S. center of gravity for pro-Israel Zionist propaganda and for the policing of what they define as anti-Semitism, which then in essence becomes virtually anything under the sun that is remotely critical of the state of Israel, including Israeli policy, Israeli military activity, and the political ideology and ethno-supremacist ideology of Zionism. Right? They view themselves and they propagate themselves as the leading anti-hate organization in the United States, if not the world. That's their words. Right? So the fact that the Stop Asian Hate movement pivots around the terms of hate made me immediately wonder whether they were in any way engaged with or influenced by the Anti-Defamation League, or in effect, one of the leading Zionist pro-Israel organizations, which of course also means an anti-Palestinian organization. And I'm in solidarity with Palestine and Palestinians in the diaspora and in Gaza, the West Bank, and all the rest of that. So the article, in essence, is about a 4,000 word revelation of all of a significant set of entanglements between a couple of the most prominent Stop Asian Hate branded organizations, that being Stop AAPI Hate, and the other one being the Asian American Foundation, and their entanglements both with Zionist and pro-Israel organizations, as well as the logics and the policies and the methods of criminal justice and policing. So Stop AAPI Hate, for example, their main mission is data gathering, right? They do data gathering around what they call hate acts. They used to call them hate incidents. So they view this as being a broader category than hate crimes. What got my attention is how dishonest the organization is, right? Stop AAPI Hate brands itself as a non-carceral organization. They see themselves as anti-racist. They see themselves as being in solidarity with Black liberation, with Palestine, even more recently. So they put themselves out there like this as an organization, and yet any casual research into the organization's history, as well as the way that the organization's data is being used by policing organizations, including the FBI, will let you know that what they actually do is in direct contradiction with what they say they are. So my problem is with the lies. My problem is with the dishonesty. I think organizations like this are selling a brand to the public that is at best deeply contradicted by their activities, deeply contradicted by the way in which their activities are used by carceral and policing apparatuses of the state. And for that matter, is also compromised by their periodic interactions with pro-Israel and Zionist people and organizations, including sharing platforms with them, right? So they've shared platforms with the FBI. They've shared platforms with people from the Anti-Defamation League. So on the one hand, it's the dishonesty. It's the dishonesty within this movement. Now, on the other hand, the Asian American Foundation is a massive, massive effort in which the Anti-Defamation League played a central role. Right, the Asian American, you'll see this in the article. I write about this. This is not difficult information to find. The Asian American Foundation was formed in significant part through the influence and leadership of Jonathan Greenblatt, who's the CEO of the Anti-Defamation League. They follow Anti-Defamation League definitions and concepts The ADL is very proud of the role that they have played in shaping the Asian American Foundation's politics. And it's no coincidence either that the Asian American Foundation, just a few months after its founding, raised $1 billion, Thandi. $1 billion with a B, $1 billion. Talking about a foundation that was founded in almost instantaneously raised $1 billion from multiple corporations, including, we could go down the list of corporations, but they're major corporations. So it just makes you start to ask questions about what the ultimate political commitments are and entanglements are of this movement that calls itself Stop Asian Hate, and the organizations that are really kind of fueling this movement, and whether it actually is in any way contributing to liberation struggle, or if it's actually generating what I would call a liberal reaction against liberation struggle, which is, I think, in the end, what I see this thing doing. That's what I see this so-called movement doing.
I'm speaking with Dylan Rodríguez, professor in the newly formed Department of Black Study at the University of California, Riverside, longtime activist, abolitionist. Were you a founder of Critical Resistance?
I was a founding member. I would only call myself a founding member.
So many things. We're talking about his recent article, How the Stop Asian Hate Movement Became Entwined with Zionism, Policing, and Counterinsurgency, that is currently published in the online journal of the Critical Ethnic Studies Association. It was originally published by TruthOut, and then it was inexplicably disappeared from TruthOut's website. I still want to talk to you about TruthOut, but let me go back real quick. I want to get to this quote that I saw in the article. This is a long quote. Okay. Stop AAPI Hate foregrounds narrative change as a primary area of mobilization, specifically mentioning the organization's participation in hundreds of speaking engagements with audiences ranging from members of Congress, the Commission on Civil Rights, the United Nations, and the World Bank, to a range of policymakers, students, and educators, as well as business, entertainment, and nonprofit leaders. And here's the point. The unspoken assumption guiding this work appears to be the notion that bureaucratic, administrative, industry, and carceral state elites should be the primary audiences and actors for such narrative change. Now, haven't we been told for most of our lives, maybe, that if you want to enact change, your target needs to be those in power? Isn't that what we've been told? That's what we are told. That is the liberal narrative of social change and social justice. You are correct. Mm-hmm. You are correct. And that's why we're here. And that's why we're struggling. And that's why we are constantly having to fight people who want to reinvent the damn wheel all the time. Mm-hmm. And keep banging our collective heads against the wall when we're tired of having our heads dented. It's a joke. It's dishonest, and it's a joke. When organizations do this kind of work, it is obvious to me, after 3 decades of doing this work, it's obvious to me that one of the primary things that is motivating and animating their activity when they go in front of these people is clout. Right? That's the 21st century term for it. These are organizations that are trying to build clout. They're trying to build influence. They're trying to build clout. They're trying to build a brand. And it's a brand that is lucrative. They get funding for this. I have to tell you that organizations like Stop AAPI Hate, I have a political criticism of them, of course, right? But I think there are so many other organizations that are in the grassroots that are doing legitimately radical solidarity-based work. I'm talking about solidarity with Black liberation and Black radical work, diasporic Black liberation work, Palestinian diasporic solidarity work, and so forth, that organizations like this crowd out. They crowd them out. They crowd them out of engagement with the grassroots, because the grassroots wants to go to these big organizations that do this successful branding exercise, right? They also crowd out the ones that are struggling to get some form of funding, whether they're nonprofit organizations or trying to raise funds, from the communities in which they're embedded. Why? Because the capital goes to these large, successfully self-branded organizations like Stop AAPI Hate. So my beef is as much with that. It's as much with the way that these large organizations, I think, in a pretty strategic and calculated way,
engage in these clout building branding exercises to crowd out organizations that are, in my view, irrefutably more politically grounded, more consistently politically principled, and irrefutably more politically effective in doing anti-carceral, abolitionist, solidarity, and liberationist work. That's my beef.
Which brings us back to the existence of the Anti-Defamation League in all of this. Now, well, I can't speak for you, but I'm getting old, so my memory is not what it used to be. But I vaguely remember the Anti-Defamation League being involved in surveillance and spying of not only left activists, but Black activists in particular. Did I?
Yes.
Did I get that?
No, you are correct. You are correct, Thandi. You are correct. There's a great article by my good friend and comrade, Emea Gelman, that was published in Boston Review about 5 years ago, in which she does a historical background, a historical analysis of the Anti-Defamation League, and walks us through exactly that point, that the Anti-Defamation League accumulated a lot of its organizational gravity and foundation by surveilling left organizations, obviously Palestinian and Arab solidarity organizations, but also, perhaps unsurprisingly, Black radical and Black liberationist organizations. That's how they cut their teeth as an organization, was they would surveil and participate in a kind of extra state, non-state policing of those kinds of organizations. So yes, that's the background of the Anti-Defamation League, absolutely.
So in no way, shape, form, or fashion is the Anti-Defamation League a liberation organization, a progressive organization, a leftist organization out here in this stratosphere.
Yeah, hey, look, but Tani, what we got to say is that they see themselves that way, and that's the point, right? In many ways, that's the point of this article I just wrote, is to talk about how these organizations that brand themselves and circulate as social justice, anti-racist organizations that put statements out there in solidarity with Palestine and Palestinians, right? That there's a deep sense of contradiction at best, dishonesty at worst, in what they actually do and what they say they are, right? And the Anti-Defamation League, in some ways, models that pattern, because the Anti-Defamation League views itself as, make no mistake about it, they view themselves as a progressive, anti-racist, anti-hate, social justice oriented organization. That's how they brand themselves and present themselves. I mean, this is facts. Like, that's how they don't see themselves as a reactionary right-wing organization at all, right? If anything, they want to fight against right-wing anti-Semitism, but in the end, what they are most effective at doing, I think this is at this point irrefutable also, what they are most effective at doing is coming after, criminalizing, and in this day and age, canceling people and organizations and collectives and communities that are involved in supporting Palestinian liberation.
So, Dylan, I believe, and you have to forgive me, your article talks about the organizations that should, the Asian organizations that should be on our radar, that are progressive and grassroots. Tell our audience about those.
Yeah, so I'll shout out a few of them. Most closest to me, in this moment, are the Asian Solidarity Collective, based in San Diego, Asian American Pacific Islander Women Lead, based in Oakland. There's some other organizations I'm just beginning to develop some contact and collaboration with. There's an organization called 18 Million Rising. There's other organizations I've followed for a while, Lavender Phoenix, Asian American Feminist Collective. And that's not to mention Palestinian Youth Movement, Palestinian Feminist Collective, and other organizations that sometimes fall off the radar because they're not necessarily branded as Asian or Asian American organizations. But these are the organizations I'm talking about that, in my view, in my study and in my collaboration, are far more serious. They're just more serious. They're more serious about building a politics and a set of activities and collaborations that is, as honest as they can be, and which also deals with contradiction in a productive and serious way. And these are organizations that I think would they would turn the other way if they're invited, for example, to participate in a forum alongside prosecutors and an FBI agent, right? I think that they would probably turn away from a platform like that, I think some of these organizations would probably turn away from funding that they knew was significantly, if not centrally, supported by a Zionist, pro-Israel, anti-Palestinian organization like the Anti-Defamation League, right? So there's a whole, spectrum of radical and leftist and solidarity-oriented and abolitionist-focused Asian American organizations out there, and especially, Palestinian and Palestinian diasporic solidarity organizations out there. That's who gets crowded out sometimes by this kind of monopoly capitalist growth of organizations that brand themselves through hashtags like Stop Asian Hate.
And the very fact that your article, I have to keep coming back to this. I have to, because this is KPFK, one of the bastions of independent media for over 60 years. I've been involved in independent media. Right. We understand the importance of independent media as in independent from mainstream or legacy media organizations such as the Washington Post, the New York Times, the LA Times, CBS, NBC, etc. So I have to keep coming back to the fact that TruthOut, one of our independent media organizations, did they know what you were going to talk about? I mean, I'm trying to understand what happened with TruthOut.
Yeah. So to be honest, I kind of am too. I'll say that I was obviously quite disappointed that they worked with me for about a month. It might have been actually a little bit longer. They worked with me editorially to build this article up. I got a bunch of feedback, incorporated it, et cetera, et cetera. And then they published the article. It was on their site. It got a lot of traction for a couple of days. And then, Stop AAPI Hate presented them with a bunch of objections to my article, which they called errors of fact. I did not see them as errors of fact. I went ahead and wrote responses to all of their concerns point by point. I even said, here's a revised version of the article. You'd have to talk to TruthOut editors about what went into the final decision. Again, like I said, I was disappointed by it, but they chose to take it down. I think that, there might have been fear of libel. And frankly, I can only speculate what impact it might have had that the article prominently engages with the presence and the influence of the Anti-Defamation League in the creation of the Asian American Foundation and the entanglement of the Asian American Foundation in the Stop Asian Hate movement. Happily, Critical Ethnic Studies Journal called on me to publish the article with them immediately. So what you see online now is an expanded, substantial, responsive version of the article that directly quotes Stop AAPI Hate's responses to the original article and my responses to their responses, right? And this is the thing, Thandi, I don't have to make anything up, right? Like if they want to question my stuff, that's cool. I got facts. I got receipts. It's not hard to find. So I was actually, in a way, I was grateful. I was grateful that Stop AAPI Hate raised these objections because it just helped. It helped me build like a even stronger foundation for this article by taking all of their objections and showing even more deeply and more empirically and more factually the degree of their dishonesty, right? Because even their objections to the original article, in my view, are deeply dishonest. So I'm disappointed by TruthOut's, reaction to this. I support TruthOut in principle. I want them to keep doing their thing, right? But I am disappointed that they took the article down. They'd have to answer for themselves as to why. I think that they felt that the article didn't support its claims. I beg to differ. Obviously, Critical Ethnic Studies Journal begged to differ. And as of now, the article is still up, and the article is sound. The evidence is sound. There's embedded links all over this article for anybody that doubts any of my assertions. So I mean, it's there. The receipts are there.
How the Stop Asian Hate movement became entwined with Zionism, policing, and counterinsurgency, written by Professor Dylan Rodríguez, currently at Critical Ethnic Studies Journal.org. So I hear you about TruthOut. We want to support them in principle, or at least in idea, but I think it's safe to say this is not a good look for this independent media outlet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll say that some colleagues had concerns about how the retraction, because they call it a retraction, right? So like for a lot of people, that's a, you know, kind of does some reputational damage. I don't see it that way. I see it as a direct reflection of the climate we're in. You know, I think I've got enough of a body of, you know, writing and work and credibility out there that I'm not really worried about that. And, you know, you can check the article out. All the evidence is there. The archive, in some ways, archives never really speak for themselves. I don't want to say it like that, but the archive is present. The archive is present, and the archive is very present tense also.
Okay, well, again, that's how the Stop Asian Hate movement became entwined with Zionism, policing, and counterinsurgency. That is the latest essay, the latest article by Dylan Rodríguez. It is published at criticalethnicstudiesjournal.org. So I'm going to pivot from that now in the time that we have left. Again, Dylan, I've known you a long time. You've done a lot of work in a lot of different areas. For those KPFK listeners who just kind of sort of might not be familiar with you and your background, of course, they can go and Google you. But I wanted to ask you, and, you know, like I said, we've known each other a long time. You know, I got nothing but love for you. But you identify as a Filipino man.
Yes. Yes, you could say that. I'm Pinoy.
You are
everyone.
Pinoy. So tell me,
Tagalog ang first language ko.
How, why, who, how did you end up in the Department of Black Study? Tell us that.
Generosity, political commitment, being in community with people, having grown up on the East Coast and gone to school and been mentored by the late great Professor James Turner, one of the people who founded the kind of contemporary versions of Africana studies and diasporic Black studies. You know, being engaged with movements and organizations that were carrying out varieties of the traditions of Black radicalism and or intersected or in solidarity with varieties of Black radicalism. You know, I don't think you have a choice as a person that's interested in liberation struggle other than to be directly involved in participating in and or at least being in solidarity with Black liberation and Black radical movement of some kind and practice and study of some kind. So yeah, it's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. You know, I'd be in the new Department of Black Study regardless. Even if I was still in the Department of Ethnic Studies, I'd probably, you know, I'd be in the same place. So, but you know what? The academic part doesn't matter that much to me. That's not fundamental to me. You know, what's fundamental is how that is just a reflection of my deeper commitments, and it's the stuff I do with people like you. To be honest, I mean that's actually what guides the work that I've been engaged with in a collective setting for all these years.
Dylan Rodríguez, professor at the University of California, Riverside.
Thandisizwe Chimurenga introduced me to Ramona Africa. You introduced me to Ramona Africa, Thandi.
Long time.
Look. I'm saying that's how deep our roots are, right? So like that's my answer. You know what? That's what I should have said. That's my answer to your question, Thandi. My answer to your question is you introduced me to Ramona Africa, and then I had to sit down with Ramona Africa and interview. I still have the tape. We did this interview, and Ramona talked to me for like 3 or 4 hours, right there on the front porch of my house. It was like 98 degrees.
As I was saying,
talk to me about eating raw sweet potatoes.
As I was saying, Dylan Rodríguez, longtime activist, professor at the University of California, Riverside, author, husband, father. If our listeners want to get more information on the work that you do, how can they do that?
Oh man, Google me. There's like, I don't know, I have like one of those link trees that has like links to a bunch of the stuff I've written and some of the podcasts I've been part of. I love doing collective work. As y'all can probably tell, I like talking to people. I like teaching. I like writing and thinking alongside folks. But you know, people can also just find me on social media if they want. That's pretty easy. It's a pretty easy way to reach me. I'm on Instagram, Dylan Rodríguez 73. I'm on Twitter at Dylan Rodríguez. And then, you know what? You can email me too. I'm not hard to find. Look me up on the UC Riverside website. Look up my name on the UC Riverside website. Hit me up. I'm easy to reach.
Dylan, thank you so much for being on Rootwork today. Greatly appreciate you.
Of course. Have me on again soon.
Absolutely.